Well, hi again, everyone. And once again, it is time for another episode of Unstoppable Mindset. We are having a lot of fun doing these podcast recordings, and I really appreciate all of you being out there. Love to hear from you if any of you have any comments on any of the things that we talk about, or even if you don't. Comment anyway. We'd love to hear from you, but I really appreciate you all being here and interacting with us. Today, we get to chat with Nicole Pytel. My screen reader pronounces it Pytel, but we were just besmirching technology, and it deserves it because it should pronounce it right. Yes. But anyway, that's okay. But Nicole has been very much involved in a lot of content marketing and a variety of things. I think we're going to have a lot of fun chatting and talking about different business things, and who knows what else will come up in the course of the conversation. That's what makes it fun, because it is truly and always is intended to be a conversation, and who the heck knows where things may go as we follow along, but we'll make it work. So Nicole, welcome to Unstoppable Mindset. We're glad you're here.
Thank you for having me. I'm thrilled to be here. I'm so excited. And I can't wait to see where the conversation goes.
I can't either. We'll have a lot of fun with it. Well, I love to start this way. Tell us about the early Nicole growing up and all that. Let's get people to have a chance to get to know you a little bit.
Yeah, well, the early Nicole is a Florida native. I know people are always a little baffled by that. Not everybody in this state is from a transplant from New York or Philly or Boston or any of those places. Some of us are born here.
And have you made friends with all the Gators?
No, I stay away from the Gators.
They're antisocial, aren't they?
They're a bit unfriendly. Yeah, I've never seen one in the wild, and I'd like to keep it that way. For sure,
I hear you.
For sure. Yeah. Well, born in Miami, grew up in Fort Lauderdale. The only daughter of two former Miami-Dade police officers. So,
gosh.
Yes. My mom was actually an undercover narc in the days of the cocaine cowboys. So she is incapable of being intimidated. And personally, I think she's amazing and also a little crazy for doing that. But yeah, grew up as an only child, had, four-legged brothers. Just had a great childhood, just really like as great as it could be. Dad worked from home, had his own business. Mom worked with dad a lot of the time and was in the PTA and running the Girl Scouts and the Young Astronauts and all the things. So, really great childhood and a lot of lessons that really kind of, still stick with me today and kind of gave me that foundation to go and do all the really cool things I've done as a grown-up. A lot of lessons learned. So, it was a good childhood.
What did your dad do, or what does he do?
He was, after he left the police force, he started his own business. He reconstructed traffic accidents. So he was an expert witness. His clients were personal injury attorneys in South Florida, which is probably the worst client you could have on the planet. Those are some demanding folks, but he handled it really, really well. He had his own business for 30 years. So yeah, he was amazing.
Did he ever consult for CSI Miami?
No, he did not.
Just checking.
He did not. That was the one cool thing he didn't do. No.
Yeah. Well, talk about the potential for pressure, but that's okay. Sounded like he had a good time and enjoyed what he did. And it does sound very fascinating.
It is indeed. Although, when you're learning to drive as a teenager and your father does that for a living, you've seen all the terrifying accident photos and heard all the stories. And so it's a little stressful learning to drive from somebody who sees the worst of the worst every single day. But, we made it.
And did Dad work as a backseat driver for you every so often?
Oh, 100%. 100%. Literally, I mean, till the day he died, he was the world's worst backseat driver. I'm in my 30s and he's like, "What are you doing?" So yeah, absolutely. 100%.
How about Mom?
Oh, Mom is amazing. And yes, she's a backseat driver as well.
Okay.
I am as well. So, but Mom is tough and also amazing and, such a great mom to her fur kids and a good grandma to my fur kids. And, just amazing the life that she's had, just grew up as a State Department brat, lived all over the world, was a
Wow.
cop, like just wild, just wild. So I have some very cool parents.
Do you have any kids of the two-legged variety?
Not the two-legged variety.
No,
I've
you
got
stick with
two
the
of the
four.
four-legged kind. Yeah.
That works.
Yeah.
They're demanding enough.
Oh, mine are little tiny divas, absolutely. And
Yeah.
I'm proud of it. They were raised to be little spoiled divas.
Well, I have my guide dog Alamo. We have a cat who's now 16 and a half years old named Stitch. She's
Wow.
the real demanding one.
Oh, I
She
bet.
she likes to be petted while she eats. And the only way to keep her from disturbing a podcast to get fed is to keep the door closed, which I do. Um, but the thing is that if the door opened, she'd probably be in here, and she would be insisting pretty loudly if I didn't respond that she needs me to go pet her while she eats. She loves it, and it's fine. There are just a few times that she doesn't get to do it, and mostly she's pretty quiet about it since the door's closed. But when we're done, I'll open the door, and I will hear from her pretty quickly that time for more food.
She's got you well trained,
She
very
does
well
have me well
trained.
trained. Yeah. Now
Yeah.
Alamo, my guide dog, is a clock watcher, so he's going to get his afternoon treat a half hour late, and he's pretty quiet about that sort of stuff. He's pretty pretty nonplussed about it. He won't come over and bug me, even though he's here in the room during the podcast, because he knows what's going on. But by the same token, as soon as we're done, he's going to be out there going, "It's after 1:30, Buster."
I hear you. Minnie and Mags will be the same way. Don't you worry. It'll be time for their dinner when we're done here. So, yeah,
Yeah.
they'll be ready.
Yeah, well, and Stitch also gets some treats in the evening. She gets them around 6:30 at night, but at 5 she starts demanding them, and she doesn't want to eat anything that's left over in her food bowl. She wants her treats, and she knows she's not going to get them until after 6:30, but she pushes anyway. It's fun. I wouldn't have it any other way, though.
No, absolutely not. They are just little rays of sunshine.
They are. So you went to college, I gather?
I did. I went to the University of Miami. Both my parents did as well. Dad actually played football there back in the day.
Ah.
Yeah, actually, I mean, honestly, growing up, I pretty much lived at the Orange Bowl on Saturdays. We had season tickets to the Hurricanes and, learned about football very, very early on. I was actually, I think I was like 5, and I was sitting there on a Saturday playing with my Barbies. And Dad came in and was like, all right, come on, put the Barbie dolls down. We're going to go watch football. You're going to learn about football. And I was hooked ever since. So, who needs
I got
Barbies?
I got hooked more on baseball. Of course, I still am of the opinion that for the longest time we had the best announcers in baseball here in California. We had Vince Scully, we had Dick Enberg, and so many people. And I learned baseball from Vince Scully. I learned all about the rules and so on because he could announce the game and he could include stories, but never missed announcing what was going on the field. So you
Right.
you got both. And I don't think there are many announcers today who can do that. And they've got buddies and they kind of talk together, but they're yammering a lot and not announcing the game, which is all the more no
Yeah.
fun. So
Yeah.
what do you do?
Yeah. There's something special about those guys that can just do it solo for 9 innings, especially with all the breaks in between pitches and things like that. I mean, it's a lot of air to fill. So yeah, I mean, Vince
But the people
Scully,
who
there's nobody better to learn from.
No, nobody better than Vinny ever in baseball. And as I said, Dick Enberg was out here, and then in basketball we had Chick Hearn, who could talk faster than anybody in the world,
Yeah.
which was pretty cool. And there were some other announcers. They weren't necessarily just announcers like Vinny. I mean, Harry Carey, who did the Cubs,
Yeah.
but he was well loved and had a great personality, and it was a lot of fun. But Vinny was definitely the best. And then Dick Enberg, who also did football, and I learned a lot about football from him, which was kind of fun. But I've always been a baseball fan.
Same. I love baseball as well. There's just something so quintessentially like wholesome and American about baseball. It's
Yeah.
just like the hot dog. And, there's just something about baseball where you just feel like just a pure, good old fashioned American kind of thing. It's just got this feeling to it.
Yeah. Well, so you went and did you do advanced degrees or just a bachelor's?
I did my bachelor's. Yeah,
Okay.
I went into broadcasting. I actually majored in broadcast journalism and psychology.
Ah, wow, that's a
Yeah,
combination.
it is. The psychology part. I've always been fascinated of like why people do what they do, and I wanted to be a sports journalist. Ever since I can remember. And I was like, well, what a great way to really understand people. If you're going to interview them and talk to them all the time and tell them stories, through the TV, like what a great way to understand them. Take psychology, learn all about that. And now that I'm in marketing, it's the same thing, trying to figure out, why'd they click on that ad and not this one? Why'd they open this email and not that one? Why'd they, read this case study and not that one? So that major was kind of the gift that keeps on giving.
Now, so you got your bachelor's and then you went into broadcast journalism?
I did. I took off to College Station, Texas, to be
Ah,
a
there you
sports
go.
reporter. Yeah, really no better place. I mean, you start in broadcasting and you're going to start in a small market, and there's all kinds of cities in the country that I'm sure are lovely, but you've never heard of them before. God
Hmm.
only knows what you're going to cover. But I was very, very blessed. I got to go to College Station, Texas. So that is the home of Texas A&M. And of course, Friday night football, the local high schools.
Hmm.
That was my job to cover that stuff. So you can't really ask for anything better than that for a first job out of school.
So did you announce the games or what did you do?
I didn't. I was a sports reporter for
Okay.
one of the local affiliates in town. So, and I was a one-man band. So I shot everything, edited everything, reported everything. I did all the things, all the things. No photog following me around. No nothing. It was all me. So I was the one, on the sidelines shooting the games or standing behind home plate. And it was fun. It was definitely an adventure. We could probably do an entire podcast just on
Probably
crazy
could.
stories about that.
Well, how long ago was that?
Oh gosh, more years ago than I'd like to think. My goodness, I went out there in 2006.
Okay.
So,
So digital
long time.
cameras had started to come into play,
Yeah, sort
sort of.
of.
Yeah.
Although when you're working in a small market, they don't have the newest equipment. So
No.
the cameras were still big and heavy. You had this big bag of stuff to lug
Yeah.
around. You had the big heavy tripod. And you're kind of going like carrying your weight in stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm doing it, depending on where I'm going, in like dress clothes and heels and trying not to fall over. So, but yeah, no, it was still the big and bulky stuff back then.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm not surprised. And at the same time you did it, what's the most memorable, if you have one, memorable event or thing that you can think of that you did while you were out there in Texas doing football and baseball and all that?
Oh man, there's so
I'll bet.
many. There's so many. But I think one of the coolest things I got to do was um, Kyle Field, which is Texas A&M's home
Yeah.
stadium. It is enormous. It seats 100,000 plus people, and being there on a Saturday is unreal. It's loud. Those are probably some of the most devoted fans on the planet. They never sit down. They practice all their cheers the night before. I mean, it's just wild. But I used to do, obviously during the season, I'd go to the weekly press conferences during the week and I'd do stories. And I don't know if I ever told anybody this publicly, but they used to leave a chain link gate open at Kyle Field on Tuesday afternoons. It was just unlocked. And so I would go in there and the stadium would be totally empty, except for
Yeah.
me, not a soul. And I'd go in there and I was, shooting my own stuff. So I had it all figured out exactly where I had to put the camera and exactly how I had the angle of the tripod and exactly where I had to stand so that I could get their home of the 12th man sign like right over my shoulder, the perfect shot for, my stand up and my story. And so every Tuesday I'd go in there, I'd kind of sneak in. I don't know to this day if they ever knew I was in there. But being in there, on the 50-yard line of this enormous stadium all by yourself, it's totally silent. You know what it's like at peak velocity volume, and being in there all by yourself, you're just like, this is the coolest thing
I know it
ever.
is
Like, this is
different.
amazing. It's wild. It's just
Well, I
wild.
well, I won't tell anyone. I mean, it's sort of like Vin Scully, who always said, "This is between me and you, nobody else." So,
Exactly.
yeah,
Exactly.
nobody will hear it. It's okay. that's that's cool. The only thing I would say about that is, um, and I experienced this. If you talk about crazy fans, Kentucky and
Oh,
football
yeah.
is just as challenging. I went to do a speech somewhere, and the speech was on Monday night. It was the NCAA championship in football, and the Kentucky Wildcats were one of the teams. And I was told that my speech had to end at 6:30. It could not go any later because if it went later, I'd be speaking to an empty gym.
Yes, you would.
And I
Absolutely. No pressure. No
No,
pressure.
no pressure at all. Well, I kept an eye on the time and ended it right at 6:30, and by 6:31 the place was empty. It was crazy.
Cleared out. Cleared out. Well,
Yeah.
hey, that speaks well for you that they were all there before the game. They weren't tailgating or anything. You were
No,
bigger than the tailgate.
I guess so, but it was fun. And then you've got North Carolina for basketball. So
Oh, yeah.
it's again, it's pretty amazing. Well, how long did you do your your stint dealing with sports and being in the news media?
Yeah, so I was a sports reporter for 2 years,
Hmm.
and then my contract was up in the summer of 2008 when the economy was not so great,
Yeah.
and I didn't want to stay in my job, not because I didn't love it. I just wasn't really making any money. You don't make any money in TV. That's the big secret. It looks so glamorous, and you're broke. Um, but it was so hard. It was basically impossible to get another sports job at
Yeah.
that time. And I got a really good opportunity at the station I was at. They were like, you know what? Like, everybody in town knows you. They see you on the sidelines. They see you behind home plate. Like, they see you at all the things. And so why don't you be the main news anchor? Because they were rebranding
Oh,
the station. And I said, you know what? Okay, cool. I'll do that. That'll be something new and different. And it kind of hurt to leave sports, but it
yeah.
was a challenge, to be the main anchor and the producer. So it was my show to run. So I did that for 2 years as
No
well.
pressure.
So no pressure at all.
No
It's
pressure.
fine.
Yeah.
No pressure.
So you did that for 2 years, and then
And then I left and I totally did something different. I left TV and I started my own content marketing agency. Just me, myself, and I, and my little built-in desk in my kitchen in my apartment. So couldn't be more different.
did you do? Now was that in Texas?
It was in Texas. It
Hmm.
was, time to leave TV. And it was just like, okay, well, what am I good at? Like, what can I do? And I said, well, shoot, I can write anything. So I'll do content marketing. And there's so many journalists that go into PR. That's kind of
Yeah.
like the thing they all do. And I was like, I don't want to do that. Like,
No.
I don't know. It was just like being on the journalism side, all the PR people, it's like, oh, come on, guys, stop. So I went into content marketing, started my own agency, just me, myself, and I. And it was scary, but it was fun. It was, throwing yourself into the deep end of the pool and seeing if you could swim.
Yeah. So now tell me something about what content marketing is.
Yeah. So, content marketing and I've always been on the B2B side, the business to business. So, and most of my career has been in tech. So, selling very expensive things to people who are very skeptical of whether or not it works and don't want to make the wrong decision on, a six-figure platform or something like that. And it's really the content marketer's job to really kind of give them almost like a buffet of things that they need to really figure out, okay, what problem do I have? what solutions are there for this problem? Like, who are the different vendors? What are the different ways to solve this problem? What makes all these vendors different? How do I know which vendor, will actually give me ROI? Like, do they understand my business? Do they understand people like me? And then, getting them all the way through until they're ready for a sales conversation. And as you might imagine, people don't like to talk to salespeople. They're,
No.
at this point, probably 80% of the way through. They probably are pretty set on which vendor they're going to go with before they talk to sales. But there's all kinds of different marketing, but content's the one that really runs the whole gamut of everything. Everything ties back to content because you've got to bring them to something. Like, ads have got to drive to something. The website's got to say something, like PR's got to plug something. So, content's kind of that through line for the entire process of them making these, huge expensive decisions.
Well, still going into content marketing, since you were in TV, is a pretty major switch all the way around. And what makes me curious is how did you discover you really knew and understood content marketing? And more important even than I guess would be, since you love TV so much, when did you decide that it was worth staying in TV than it was to switch careers? That had to be a pretty scary thing. Or maybe it wasn't. You may be just used to doing that sort of thing.
Yeah, no, leaving TV, there was a day, when I knew I was done with TV, and I was kind of frustrated with it. You're not making much money, and at that time it was so tough. The economy was still tough
Yeah.
even a couple of years after that, and it was tough. And news is a totally different kettle of fish than sports.
Yeah.
Sports is fun, and the fun stories and the feature stories, and news is just, it can be depressing. It
Yeah.
can, if it bleeds, it leads. That's, where we're at. And that just started to get to me. And there was one day where things were just really, really slow. And I was just like, oh my God, we don't have a lead story, and time is a ticking, and 10 o'clock is coming whether I'm ready or not. And it's not like you can get on TV and go, well, hey, good evening. Nothing happened today. Shut off your TV and go to sleep.
And that's a story.
That's a story in and of itself. Nothing happened. And I was really struggling, like, oh my God, what's the lead story? What's the lead story? Am I going to have to take something and just kind of, make chicken salad out of chicken, what, and try to pass this off as important? And then we heard over the scanner there had been this fatal car accident, and this teenage girl had died in a car accident. And for a split second, I thought, oh, thank God I have a lead story. And then in the next second, I went, oh my God, like, how is that your reaction to this story? Like, this girl is gone. Her family's destroyed forever. Like, how did your brain even get to, oh my God, thank God I have a lead story? And it was then that I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. I was one foot out the door, and then I was like, I don't like this. And to this day, I don't remember the girl's name. I don't remember any of the details, but I still think about it because it was really this turning point of like, I just don't want to do this anymore. Like, I want to go do something else that, maybe if I had stayed in sports, it would have been totally different. But the news side is just, it's tough. It's tough to see all that bad stuff day after day after day and kind of capitalize on it.
Yeah. I'm amazed at some of the reporters that I watch and just listen to how they report the news. And now there's always, it seems, in our country, a lead story of some sort, but how they do it and how they're able to do it day after day without registering too much emotion is pretty amazing. And I hope that their characters just don't become so hardened that they don't feel sympathy. And I think they don't. The reporters that I tend to watch, I think, are very human oriented, but and they behave appropriately, but at the same time, I'm amazed that they're able to do what they do, and it's got to be so tough.
It is tough. It is tough because sadly, you're kind of seeing the worst of the worst. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, that's the stuff that makes the news. And today, you know, I don't watch local news really at all anymore, but it seems like now it's just kind of the police blotter, and it's like
Yeah.
I don't want to hear about all these bad things. You know, it's just, you know, the storytelling has kind of fallen out of it quite a bit.
I collect old radio shows as a hobby, and I'm very fascinated to listen to the old news broadcasts from the 20s, well, the 30s, 40s, and into the 50s mainly. And I've heard some interviews with people um, who did news back in those days, and who are somewhat still, well, they're still alive, or they used to be, and they talk about how news broadcasting has changed over the years, and they don't they don't do the same kind of news that they used to do, where they would report on things. Now they've got different people sort of chattering back and forth, and they sometimes make light of stories, and they just do a lot of different things, but they're not reporting the news the way the old
Yeah.
reporters used to do.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you know, back in the day, you had, you know, Walter Cronkite kind of ripping the paper off, you know, or, you know, they're sitting there smoking a cigarette, giving the news. I mean, you know, stuff like
Yeah,
that. And, you know, yeah, it's just, it's totally different. I think it's become so sensationalized and everybody's obsessed with being first. I think, I mean, you always want to be first, but I think people are obsessed with being first, even if they don't always get it right.
yeah,
Um, and
that's
there,
happened a lot.
it happens a lot. And also it's like who can be the most sensational, who can make the biggest splash, and you know, it just I don't know, it's changed so
Yeah.
much. Yeah.
Well, so now, but again, well, not now, but then you went into content marketing. Do you feel that you knew that business as you were going into it, or did you have a lot to learn, and how did you do it? Because for a while it was just you doing everything.
Yeah, it was me doing literally everything. And did I know about content marketing? No, I didn't. I knew how to write, so I knew I could do copywriting. And I said, okay, well, I'll figure out the marketing part. And it took a lot of courses. I learned about SEO. I learned about email marketing. I learned about inbound marketing. You know, I just took every course that I could and kind of just built the plane as I flew it. And you know, because yeah, when you start your own business and you're all by yourself, there's no senior person to go ask. You're the person and you've got to figure it out. And you know, I like to say the money train doesn't just magically show up every
No.
2 weeks. You know, you've got to work and you've got to earn it. And so when you've got your own business, you know, that's just it's a lot of pressure. And so, yeah, I just went and learned as I went and learned a lot quickly. And, you know, would I tell everybody to go do that? No. But for me, it was like, well, if I can do that, I could probably do anything. I mean, shoot,
Yeah.
I kept a roof over my head and food on the table for 8 years with my own business. So that's something that a lot of people can't say.
Did you make any kind of mistake at the beginning, or as you were starting and running this business, that you're very grateful today that you made?
Oh, I made plenty of mistakes. Oh my goodness! And of course, you're going to make mistakes. You're just learning. You're just drinking from the fire hose and just hanging onto the bowl, you know. And I think there was a couple of mistakes I made. I think probably the biggest was not shutting off. You know, and I had come from news where at 10 o'clock, the news started. At 10:30, the show was over. You were
Hmm.
done for the day. Nothing carried over to the next day. You came into
Hmm.
work the next day. You started over. And it was really hard to have work that dragged on for days or weeks at a time. And, you know, it was hard to shut off, especially when it's your own business. It's like, oh, let me just reply to this one email, or let me check this one thing, or let me go do this one thing over here. And when I started my own business, you know, I was working out of the kitchen. So, you know, you go to sit down and relax on the couch at night, and your computer's, 4 feet away in the kitchen. So you're, oh, I'll just go check this one thing. And I never was shutting off. And you burn out that way.
Yeah.
You really do. And I'm glad I learned that lesson. And I'm not saying I've never repeated that lesson, because I've definitely, it's a very acquired skill to be able to just turn your brain off and go focus on something else. But I'm glad I made that mistake, because it really showed me, like, you don't have to be on 24/7, even
Yeah.
to run your own business, and you have to stop. And so what I've done ever since then, ever since I was able to afford, a 2-bedroom apartment or whatever, even my house now, I've always had an office, so that, I go, I do my work, and then at the end of the day, I shut off the computer and I leave that room, and I don't come back until the next day. Where it's like, like if you go to a traditional office, you get up at 5 o'clock, you walk out, you're back at 9 o'clock the next morning. Like I've worked really hard to do that at home, to really avoid that whole always on kind of mentality, because you've just got to kind of stop, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. My wife passed away in November of 2022, and she was more of a late riser, and I was more of a morning person, but we compromised pretty well. But since she has passed, I tend to get up pretty early, because I can eat breakfast and then come in and spend time before anything else happens, going through emails and doing some things, but I don't have to rush doing it. And
Right.
that helps. But then the other things happen in the course of the day. But I know what you're saying, and I work pretty hard at shutting things down by around 5 o'clock. Of course, I also have to do that because I have two creatures who say it's 5 here, not somewhere else, and we better
It's
get our
time.
food. Yeah.
Yep.
So they help. But I hear what you're saying, and it is a discipline. Working at home and working for yourself is a discipline that a lot of people
Oh, yeah.
could learn and don't, or just don't have the skills to do. But it is, I think, a very doable thing, and I enjoy it. And I usually
Yeah,
have
I,
I usually have
I enjoy it as
television
well.
I have
Yeah.
television or something on in the background, although I don't listen to much of it. It's just background noise, but it's there
Yeah.
and it helps.
Yeah. Yeah, there's something about silence. I've always got to have, some music on or something. It's like the silence gets a little deafening when you're at home working. It's funny that way.
I do some stuff on the weekends, and when I do catching up on letters and things like that on the weekends, I typically don't turn anything on. I just focus and get it done, and then I go off and read and do other things. So it works out. But I hear what you're saying, and I think it's an important lesson to learn, that you've got to find a way to recognize that it is important to turn off. And if you don't, you're going to drive yourself crazy.
You will. And now that we've got, email on our phones and Slack on our phones and LinkedIn on our phones, it's really easy to sit on the couch at night after dinner and just, oh, let me check my email this one more time, or let me reply to this Slack message. And you just got to stop, because
Yeah.
you will burn out, and then, you're of no use to anybody, most of all yourself,
Have you
and I
ever?
think that
Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think it's a lesson that a lot of people struggle with,
Hmm.
because everything is just this on demand, one tap of your phone. You can just be back at work 24 hours a day. And I think you have to learn that I don't have to be on 24/7 to be
Hmm.
successful. I think
Yeah.
that's the thing you've got to learn.
Do you think you've experienced burnout along the way?
Oh yeah,
Uh-huh.
absolutely. Absolutely. You know, one of my bad habits is, I'll kind of like put myself last. And I've learned that, oh, it's really easy to, oh, I won't go for a run this morning because I've got, this work thing that I've got to do. And, you've got to kind of treat yourself as a non negotiable as well. Not that you get to do the run every morning. There's some mornings when you really can't. But if you look at the run as, something that's you taking care of yourself, and something that is pretty non-negotiable and it needs to be part of the schedule, you're more likely to to stick with it and not push it off to the side. Cause yeah, I'm guilty of that. You push things off to the side. You're eating at your desk. You're passing up on this, or oh, I'm not going to go out to dinner tonight because I'm going to sit here and catch up on stuff. And you burn out, and it's exhausting.
Yeah. Yeah. You gotta, gotta learn to keep things in perspective. And you're right.
Yeah.
Yourself is an important part of what you do, and you have to be able to take care of yourself along the way as
Yep.
well.
Yeah.
You had your own company for almost 10 years, and then you decided to go back to work for someone else. What caused that to happen?
Yeah, so it was a couple of things. One was, when you own your own business, and Michael, you understand this, you're the everything. You're the president, you're the head of marketing, you're the head of sales, you're the head of operations, you're doing the taxes, you're doing all the things. And you're not necessarily good at all the things, and you don't necessarily enjoy all the things,
Yeah.
And so there was kind of two reasons. So I wanted to really focus on what I was good at, which was the content marketing part. I didn't want to have to fill out quarterly reports for the state, or, things like that, all the admin work that goes into
Yeah.
running your own business. And so I said, okay, I want to be able to do what I do best. And I want to be able to work with clients that are bigger than I can get myself. And so I was really, really lucky to land at an agency. I worked remotely, but the agency was based in Silicon Valley. And, our biggest client was Google. And for clients, it doesn't get any bigger than that.
No.
So, I got to just focus on the content marketing part and work with companies and people that I never would have been exposed to if I had stuck with my own business. No matter what, I was never going to break into Silicon Valley from my apartment in Florida. So,
Yeah.
it was the right decision. It really was. And in job interviews, people asked me, well, you're giving up being your own boss? And it's like, I've got very specific reasons for doing that. It was just time.
Do you feel like in any way it was a step backwards going to work for somebody rather than being the boss?
No, I don't think so. Because that 8 years that I had my own business, I've got that under my belt, and no one can take that experience away. It is what it is. I learned a lot of lessons. I learned a lot of lessons the hard way too, and it was a great springboard. But I like being able to focus on what I'm best at, and the stuff that I've been able to do since then. I wouldn't have had those opportunities if I had just kind of kept with my own business. So I didn't see it as a step back at all, because I had very specific reasons for making the move.
Yeah. And, I respect that and went through the same sort of thing. I owned my own company for 4 years back in the mid 1980s because I wasn't able to find a job at the time. People just wouldn't hire blind people. So I started my own company. And then eventually decided to go back into the workforce. And my wife and I worked out a plan for that. And I created a cover letter that actually impressed some people, and I got a job out of it. But by the same token, I wasn't at all regretful about having to stop doing what I was doing and go back to work for someone else, partly because some of those very pressures that we're talking about went away, and partly because, as you said, it was time and I knew it. So we did.
Yeah. Yeah, you've got to go with your gut on stuff like that, Like if your gut is telling you something, or if you're like, I think I'd be a little bit happier doing something else, or if I didn't have to do this part of it, go for it.
Mm-hmm. Well, so there were times that, as you describe it, you would go into a role with no map. You were the only and the first content marketing hire, and you did a lot of stuff with Google Cloud marketing and so on. What's the difference? I guess the best way to put it, what's the difference between, what's the difference between confidence and just hiding fear? That's probably the good basic question.
Yeah. They're probably kind of on the same plane.
But they project differently.
They project very differently. They project very differently. So yes, I created my own business, and then two of the agencies I've worked at, I was the first, full-time content hire, built the content marketing practice. It was like building a business within a
Mm-hmm.
business, and all
Mm-hmm.
the things that go along with that. I just didn't have to do the taxes. And
Which is
but
a good thing.
Yeah, that's a great thing.
Yeah.
And then at the same time, yeah, I was embedded with Google Cloud's marketing organization, and so I think confidence is, you can do it. Like deep down, you're like, I know my stuff. I can do the work. I can do this. And then, of course, there's the fear of, oh my God, like Google, like I'm going to have a Google email address. I'm going to have, a title at Google and a supervisor at Google. Like, oh my God. Like, and then of course, the fear comes in, the imposter syndrome kind of comes in, like me, really? And I think it's kind of like jumping into a really cold pool. You're scared, but you just got to do it and kind of not fake it till you make it, but just dive in and trust in the confidence side. It's like the devil and the angel on your shoulder. One is your confidence, that's the angel, and the
Yeah.
devil is the fear. And just listen to that confident part, and eventually I feel like the fear gets drowned out. Now,
Yeah.
does the imposter syndrome ever totally go away? Of course not. Of course not. We all have days where you're like, why am I here? Why is anybody listening to me? Why does anybody think I'm smart? We all have those days. But,
Yeah.
Eventually, if you've got that confidence in yourself, it will win out.
Hmm. Yeah. It is something that we all have to deal with, but I think we can. I think if we truly understand ourselves and we listen to our inner voice, we'll get the guidance and the confidence that we need. I think so many people tend not to be introspective and tend not to go back and listen to the lessons that they could learn from their own inner subconscious, their own inner voice.
Oh, yeah.
And the result of that is that they end up being very clueless. But the fact of the matter is, there's a part of you that monitors every single solitary thing that you do, and it's ready to give you the information that you need if you'll but take the time to learn to listen to it. And most people just don't do that. But the fact is, we should take that time because we'll get better results than we would ever get any other way.
It's funny because we'll say things to ourselves that we would never say to somebody else.
Yeah.
Like you'd never say it to a friend, but you say it to yourself. It's like, why do we do that? And, sometimes I think one of the most important questions I've ever asked myself is, why not you? You want to go be a sports journalist in Texas? Why not you? Why can't you do that? You want to own your own business? Why not you? People do that all the time. Why can't you do it? And I think if you're really honest with yourself and you say, well, why not you? And you force yourself to kind of have this conversation with yourself and give an answer, a lot of times you can't think of one.
Mm-hmm. And you create excuses.
You do.
Which really are not helping, and they're not healthy, but you do it anyway. And I understand the concept of imposter syndrome, but you ultimately have control over that.
You do. And I think that's the thing. It's, I think anxiety gets the best of us a lot of the time. And you've got to be like, okay, well, what can I control? What is totally out of my control? I actually heard somebody say today, when anxiety creeps in and you have a thought, oh my God, what if XYZ happens? You say to yourself, so what if it does? Like, so what? Like, can you control it? Can you fix it? And if not, then you shouldn't just give it airtime in your brain,
We spend so much time worrying about everything over which we don't have control, and we don't really learn about the things over which we truly have control and should focus our time on, which is such an issue, because the reality is over 95% of the things that we worry about and what if about all the time are things over which we have no control.
Exactly.
I hear a lot of people say, I don't watch the news because I just get angry at all that. Well, I like to watch the news because I love information, but I can do that generally without getting angry. Now, sometimes I will I will yell at somebody on the TV because they say dumb things. There are people who've learned how to do that, but I also don't spend a lot of time at it. And I also know that I'm not going to hurt them, even if they hear me. So
Right.
the bottom line is that I work at not doing that, but I still want to get the information as to what's going on. So I do.
Yeah. And that's you. I want to know, and what can I control my reaction to it? I'm not
Yep.
going to get angry unless somebody says something really, really stupid. And then, it comes out. But yeah, that's a great example. I want to know what's happening and I'm going to control my reaction to it. And a lot of times that's all we can control is our reaction to things.
But we don't, which is really
And we
the
don't.
problem. We don't,
Yeah.
and we
Yeah.
should.
Yep.
Well, speaking of reactions, earlier this year you got laid off from your VP role. I'm curious, what did that do to how you see your own professional identity and so on? Or did you know it was coming or anything like that?
There were some rumblings right before it happened that it was coming. And, I'm one of, sadly, very, very many people, thousands, tens of thousands, maybe even hundreds of thousands of people in this position. And it's tough because you're not your job, but when you do something 40 hours a week and you get up every day and that's what you do, it becomes part of who you are. It's like, that's what I do. And then when that's gone, it's just like, well, now, like, am I still useful? Like, am I still smart? And all these things go through your mind. And you learn a lot about yourself when that happens. Talking about, hey, all I can control is how I react to it. Lord knows, when you get laid off, like there's a million what ifs running through your brain. And all you can do is just keep putting one foot in front of the other and controlling how you react to it. But it absolutely, it definitely shakes your confidence. And, it's a very weird feeling, that first Monday when you don't go to work. It's like, oh my God, the rest of the world went back to work and I didn't. And it's very jarring. Especially when you're as old a fossil as me and you've been working for so long, it's like, and now you're not. I've been very, very lucky to take on, some freelance work and stuff like that. And it's given me an opportunity to really catch up on a lot of the things that I wanted to learn and try and do when I was working full time and didn't really have the time. So from that perspective, it's been really good, but it'll knock you down for a minute and it's up to you to kind of pick yourself back up. And that's where you kind of learn a lot about yourself as to how you react to that.
Yeah. And you have to, again, it's a matter of choice and you have to decide what you want to do.
Right.
Well, so you got laid off. Did you sleep late that first Monday?
I didn't. You know what I did?
You didn't, huh?
You know what I did? I knew I had to give myself something to do. So I got up early on that first Monday and I went and got the oil changed in my car. I was like, I'm going to go out and be productive. Could I have laid in bed all day and just kind of wallowed in self-pity?
Yeah, that doesn't help.
Yeah, but that's not helpful. So I was like, I'm going to go get that oil change I've been putting off for like 2 months. So,
and you got to go in earlier than you otherwise would have and probably got it done sooner.
There you go. There you go. Sometimes it just works out.
And you probably had two little fur creatures who were very glad to see you continuing to support their habits.
Yes. They, my little fur divas, yes, they're kind of like, now, Minnie's worked with me her whole life. She just turned 14. I've had her since she was 11 months old and I've worked at home her whole life. And so she comes to the office with me every single day with her little memory foam and she gets her decompression time too. She knows at 5 o'clock when I take her memory foam bed back into the bedroom, like, all right, I'm done working for the day. I'm good. But, at first she was like, why aren't we working, Mom? And then, we got some freelance work and got back in the office. And I could tell she was like, okay, we're getting back to normal. Because at first they were both like, what are we doing? Aren't you supposed to be working? Like, what's happening? But as long as they've got all their treats and all their toys and all their things, they're good.
Didn't you tell them that it was time for them to go get a job?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And how'd that work for you?
Absolutely. No, it didn't
Yeah.
work out. They were like, "We don't do that." Like, I don't think you
Yeah.
understand, Mom. Yeah,
Yeah.
this is
That's your
not how
job.
this works.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, so one of the things I think that's interesting, we're all facing it to one degree or another, is the whole concept of AI. A lot of people are afraid that AI is coming for their jobs, and I can make some comments, and I will, about that. But you've chosen to face that fear and confront it. Um, so I guess the real question is, why do you think that was the right call, and what do you think about this whole business of AI?
AI is really something. And I've seen both sides of it. As a content marketer, we were supposed to become extinct because AI could just write everything. And my point is like, can AI create content? Sure, but it doesn't know what to create. And that's where the human comes in. Like the human has to come up with the strategy. And, I remember the first time trying out ChatGPT and having it write stuff and it wasn't very good. And, obviously things have gotten much, much better in the past 4 years. But, it just became obvious that this is a thing. And I guess, as a benefit, so many of my clients were AI companies in some way, shape, or form. And it's like, this is happening, and you have got to learn how to deal with it. And at least in my job, it can make me better at my job
Yeah.
because it can speed things up. It can kind of eliminate some redundancies. And is it ever going to replace me? No, because I'm the human with the judgment, and I understand, the business goals of what we're trying to do and how we hit the revenue goals and who the audience is and what they care about and all of those things. But I think one of the silver linings of getting laid off was, I've had a chunk of time to really dive in and get my hands dirty with AI. Like the
Yeah.
things that I was like, oh, if I could have it do this, this, and this, that'd be really cool. And then go in and build it and see, hey, can I actually build this? And go into Claude Code and see if
Yeah.
I really can do that. And it's given me a chance to really do that and go, okay, well, when I get another job, this is how I'm going to use AI on day one. I'm going to create, this list of things, and here's why. Here's the order I'm going to do them in. And here's where I'm going to use AI to make it better. But more importantly, here's kind of the framework for how humans and AI should work together in content marketing. Because there's so many people out there that are like, hey, ChatGPT, go write my website for me. And then they wonder why it's not very good, or why it sounds the same as their competitors. There's studies out there that say, buyers think that these companies all sound the same. And, AI is a big reason for that. So
Mm-hmm.
if you can really figure out how humans and AI work together, I think that's the piece. And there at the beginning, there were a lot of content marketing kind of purists out there that were like, I will never use this. I'm going to write everything myself. I'm going to do everything from scratch. And I was just like, that's like saying, when cars came out, like, I'm not
I'm
getting
riding
in
a
a
horse. I'm
car.
not getting a car.
I'm
Yeah.
taking my horse and buggy to work. I mean, it's the same thing. Like things evolve, and take advantage of it.
Well, the reality is that AI is here. And I think you're right. What we need to do is to learn how to use it. I heard a friend comment a couple months ago that was talking to his boss about AI. And his boss said, I will never fire you and replace you with AI. I won't do that. He said, I might fire you if you don't learn how to use AI. And I
Yes.
think that's absolutely true. I
Yep.
use AI when I write because
Mhm.
it gives me ideas, but ultimately I have to still be the one to create them. And I am not convinced that we're going to see AI in anywhere in the near future develop the true human spirit and learn how to do the things that we do.
Right.
And so I think it's important that we learn how to use AI. And I get a lot of great ideas from it. And
Oh
some of them
yeah.
go into what I write. And that's great because it's got a
Yeah.
lot more information and experience than I do. So I don't mind doing that. And I'll be glad to take the ideas. The first time I heard anybody talking about AI, I was in a Christmas party with relatives, and somebody was complaining because teachers were grousing about the fact that kids were just letting AI write their papers.
Yeah.
And I said, why not? Let AI write the papers. You're missing a golden opportunity. And the golden opportunity, and I've said this before on Unstoppable Mindset, but the golden opportunity is the teacher should let students, if they want to use AI to write their papers, let them use AI to write their papers. But then after you collect the papers, take a period, call each student to the front of the class and say, now defend your position. You're going to find out who really knows what they're talking about and who doesn't.
Yep.
What a
Yeah.
great opportunity.
That's one way to do it for sure. And my guess is most of them would have
Yeah.
no idea.
Yeah. How has your view of of a professional career changed since you started years ago, or has it?
Yeah, many, many, many moons ago.
Many moons.
Um, I think when you first start out in your career, and tell me, Michael, if you agree with this, you just want to get going. It's like, I'm a grown up now. I get to do all these grown up things, and all the things that I learned about in school, I'm going to run off and do them. And I want to do as much as I can, as fast as I can, and climb the ladder and do all the things. And then, that's still important, obviously. But I think it's more about, am I doing something that I truly, truly take pride in, something that I believe in,
Mm-hmm.
like, I could never go work for a company and do marketing if I thought the product was boring. I
Yeah.
just couldn't. I don't really care what title you give me, or how much money you want to pay me. It's like, if it's going to be boring, I don't want to
Yeah.
do it. So I think part of it is, you know, are you getting satisfaction out of what you're doing?
Also, we need to recognize and understand that sometimes life gets in the way, and you start out with a great plan. This is what I'm going to do, and something
Yeah.
happens to change it.
Yep.
And the reality is, again, it's of course how you approach that change, but that change might very well be for the best. I know that's happened to me several times.
Yeah.
And I have learned that life may happen, things may happen, but I'm going to not, I didn't have control over the change necessarily happening. So it's a question more about how I decide to deal with it and what I'm going to do. And I think that's what's really so important to be able to do. And so I find that it's so important to let life do what life is going to do, and you evaluate which way you want to go, but truly evaluate it. Don't just react. Sit back and think. You may decide to keep on doing what you're doing, and you're given another opportunity. And of course, for me, the most dramatic example of that is after September 11th, people started calling and saying, gee, would you come and talk to us and tell us what we ought to know about September 11th and talk to us about leadership and so on? We saw your name in the media and we want to hear from you and we'll pay you. And of course, you'll pay me. That was a great start. But what happened was that so many of those happened that my wife and I, by the beginning of 2002, realized that this was an incredible opportunity. It would take work, but it was an incredible opportunity. And that in reality, as I tell people, selling life and philosophy is a whole lot more rewarding than being a computer hardware sales manager and selling computer hardware. And so I've been doing it ever since. And I've had so many wonderful adventures. And I've met so many people, learned so many things, and I spend the time working on learning wherever I go and wherever I speak. And so I can't complain at all about what caused my life to change.
Yeah, I mean, everything happens for a reason. I really do believe that. And you may not know what that reason is right away, but yeah, I mean, look at you. I can't even imagine having been there on September 11th. It was jaw-dropping enough to watch it on TV, and I'm sure there was a lot that went through your mind and went through your mind during and right after, and but now look at, I mean, all the people that you've gotten to inspire and educate and motivate, and people who have really learned something, and you never would have had that platform. It's
Yeah.
it's really something.
Um, and it's and if you're given a choice between two things that both really sound great, you make a choice, and then you live with the choice you made.
Yep.
Again, don't don't what if the things over which you don't have control.
Right. Exactly.
Well, if someone is in a position today where they're listening and they're standing kind of in the same place you were when you decided to go leave television and so on, and they're certain that they should be going off and doing something different, but they're terrified to admit it, what would you say is the one thing that you should tell them?
I would say if your gut is telling you to do something, you need to listen to it. Um, and I would say, ask yourself, why not me? Why can't I go do this? Now, if you want to run off and be an astronaut and go to Mars and do something that's totally unrealistic, okay, no, don't go do that. But assuming it's feasible, go do it. Go try it. What's the worst that can happen? It doesn't work and you go do something else. That's the worst that can happen. But if you don't do it, you're always going to wonder, could I have made that work? Could I
Yeah,
have done something really cool? And I think that would be so much worse than trying and failing is
yeah.
the looking back, the what if looking back. What if I had done that? What would life be like right now? And I'd rather try and fail than live with the regret of never having tried.
Well, and I try to tell people, I reject the concept of failure. We don't fail. It didn't go the way you planned, but then that gets back to look at it in the evening before you go to bed. What didn't work? Why didn't it work? What could I have done differently? And use it as a teaching moment. I think we're
100%.
truly our own best teachers. We tend to think of ourselves as our own worst critics, and I did that for many years. And I finally realized when someone once said, no one can teach you anything; you can only teach yourself. That I'm looking at it all wrong. And I now say I'm my own best teacher, which is so much more positive. And the reality is you can always learn from things that happen. So it's not a failure. It may not go the way you plan, but why didn't it? What could you have done differently? How do you deal with it in the future? And I think that's so important.
Yeah, totally agree. I think of it as like a little plot twist. It's just, oh, that didn't work. Let's just pivot and go to the next thing.
Yeah. And figure out. And it may very well be that in a couple of years it will work. As far as being an astronaut and going to Mars, go meet a Martian. Then you'll get there. Nothing wrong with that.
There you go.
I'm sure they're out there somewhere.
They're out there somewhere, I'm sure.
Well, I want to thank you for being here. If people want to reach out to you and learn more, or get a chance to learn from you and so on, how do they do that?
Yeah, connect with me on LinkedIn. Just look for Nicole Pytel. It's Pytel. Happy to connect, happy to chat. Always looking forward to meeting new people. And hey, if you want to geek out on marketing or AI, all the better.
Have you written any books?
Not yet.
Well,
Maybe one day. I'd never say never, right? But not
you
yet.
suppose I've seen so many ads over the past few weeks that say, "Just let AI write your book for you." Yeah, right.
Oh, have you seen the books where they accidentally leave the ChatGPT prompt in there and it makes
Yeah,
it into the
I haven't
book?
seen that. That's cute.
Oh, it's so
Oh,
cringe.
that's lovely.
Yeah.
That's lovely. Oh
It's
well, what do you
brutal.
do? Yeah, no, I
Yeah.
haven't. I haven't even tried. When I get those, I delete them. There's just not worth reading.
Yeah.
Well,
Exactly.
I want to thank you for spending all this time with us. This has been fun, and you've got creatures that are demanding your attention, and I've got one over here who wants his treat, and he's being very patient. So I want to thank you for being here, and I want to thank all of you who are out there observing us today, wherever you're monitoring our podcast. Thanks for doing it. Love to hear from you. I'd appreciate it if you'd email me. It's real easy. You can email me at speaker@michaelhingson.com. That's SPEAKER at MICHAELHINGSON.com. And of course, please give us a great review wherever you're listening. Nicole would appreciate it. I would appreciate it, but we would love to hear from you. And we love all the stories that people like Nicole get to come and tell us. So really thank you for your time being here with us. And Nicole, especially you, thanks for being here. This has been fun.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. It was a blast.
If you're ready to go deeper into the ideas that shape how we see ourselves and others, I have a free gift for you. Head over to michaelhingson.com and download my free ebook, Blinded by Fear. Keep learning, keep questioning, and keep choosing to live with an unstoppable mindset.